Sometimes the hardest truth about leadership is the one nobody tells you until it's too late. When most people first step into leadership, they imagine it like stepping onto a stage. Lights, attention, decisions, control. You think, now I'm the one who directs everything. And honestly, it feels exciting for a moment. You finally have a voice that carries weight. People look to you, they wait to hear what you'll say next. But here's the lesson I wish more leaders learned. Early leadership has far less to do with being up front and far more to do with the people standing next to you. Real leadership isn't, I'm responsible for how the people around me feel, grow, and succeed. It's a very different mindset. When someone looks at you as a leader, they're not actually asking, what should I do? Most of the time, they're silently asking, can I trust you? Will you respect me? Will you hear me when I speak? And if the answer is yes, they'll walk with you anywhere. If the answer is no, they'll follow only because they're forced to. And that's not leadership. That's control. Control breaks the moment pressure shows up. Leadership holds steady when everything shakes. The leaders who struggle the most are usually the ones obsessed with appearing strong. They don't ask questions. They don't show uncertainty. They try to project confidence so hard that they forget to be human. People don't need perfect leaders. They need honest ones. Standing beside people means noticing when someone is exhausted. It means saying, talk to me, what's going on, instead of, why aren't you performing? It means celebrating quietly when someone else shines, even if no one claps for you. And yes, sometimes it means choosing what is right over what is easy, even when people don't understand right away. Leadership at its core is about service. Not the kind of service where you're weak or passive, but the kind where your strength is measured by how many people rise because of you, not how many stand below you. You'll know you're leading the right way when people stop saying, they told us what to do, and start saying, they helped us believe we could do it. That shift from command to connection is where real influence lives. And once you see leadership that way, you never forget it. Because suddenly, every decision becomes less about ego and more about impact. Less about how you look and more about who you're helping become stronger. One of the biggest traps new leaders fall into is this quiet pressure that whispers, you're supposed to know everything now. The moment the title changes, the expectations feel heavier. People come with questions, problems, frustration, ideas, and suddenly you believe your worth is measured by how quickly and confidently you respond. And so you start pretending. You nod even when you're unsure.
You give directions even when your gut is saying, I need more information.
You avoid asking clarifying questions because you're worried someone might think you're unqualified. And here's the irony. The more you pretend to know everything, the more disconnected you become from the truth that actually helps you lead well. Real leaders don't carry the burden of being the smartest person in the room. They carry the responsibility of helping the smartest ideas in the room come to life. I've seen teams freeze under leaders who always have an answer ready. Not because the teams lack creativity, but because they feel like their thoughts don't matter. Why speak up if the decision is already made before the conversation begins? When a leader creates that environment, people stop thinking. They just start complying. And once people stop thinking, innovation dies. Motivation fades. The room gets quieter, not because everything is fine, but because everyone has learned it's safer to stay silent. Admitting you don't know something is not weakness. It's honesty. And honesty creates space for contribution. There's real strength in saying, come, let's figure this out together. Sin, what do you think? Explain your perspective. I might be missing something. Those simple sentences do something powerful. They tell people you value their minds, not just their labor. They tell people their insight matters, not only their output. And when people feel valued, they lean in. They bring ideas you never would have thought of. They catch blind spots before they turn into failures. They start solving problems on their own instead of waiting to be directed. Truth is, leadership is less about having answers and more about asking better questions. Questions open doors. Answers, especially rushed ones, often close them. Yes, there will be moments when you need to decide. Moments when hesitation costs time, money, or trust. But even in those moments, the best decisions are almost always shaped by the voices you invited earlier, the conversations you encouraged, and the humility you practiced long before the pressure arrived. If you think leadership means always knowing, you'll carry an exhausting burden and you'll isolate yourself in the process. But if you understand that leadership is about learning with others, abundantly honestly, consistently, then every challenge becomes a shared mission instead of a private fear. And that's where real confidence comes from. Not from pretending, but from building a team that learns together and grows stronger together. There's a moment every new leader eventually faces. You're talking, explaining, directing, and you suddenly realize people are nodding, but not really connecting. They're hearing you, but they're not with you. And the quiet truth behind that moment is simple. You've been talking more than you've been listening. Most people think leadership is about being heard, but the leaders people respect the most, the ones they remember, are the ones who make them feel heard. Listening isn't passive. It isn't just sitting quietly while someone else speaks. Real listening is curious. It leans in. It looks beneath the words for what someone is really trying to say. And here's the part many leaders miss. When people feel listened to, they give you something authority alone can never buy. Commitment.
Authority can make someone show up.
Listening makes someone care. Think about the workplaces, families, teams, or communities that feel heavy. Usually, it isn't because people hate the work. It's because they feel invisible in it. Their ideas get brushed aside. Their concerns get minimized. Their experiences get dismissed with a quick, we'll figure it out, that never actually gets followed up. Over time, people stop bringing their hearts with them. They only bring their hands. And when that happens, everything slows down. Creativity, energy, loyalty, effort. Listening reverses that. When someone tells you this isn't working, and instead of getting defensive, you say, tell me more, you create safety. When someone shares a mistake and instead of shaming them, you ask, what did we learn? You build trust. When someone proposes an idea that isn't fully formed yet and you encourage them anyway, you grow confidence. Listening does more than fix problems. It builds people.
Really, you have a capacity presence. Maybe to him to be this is a wholesome life. A presence is them to for you now the region mid about has most later up 100 from and that will be a bit told probably you'll be getting on criminally you on the new pitch.
And of course, for Black and Race, take a great dimension. The truth is, you can't see everything from the seat of leadership. No matter how observant you are, there are angles you miss. Listening gives you those missing angles. It shows you the real story behind the numbers, the real reason behind the conflict, the real emotion behind the silence. Some leaders worry that if they listen too much, they'll look unsure. But it's usually the opposite. The leader who refuses to listen looks insecure because they're constantly proving themselves. The leader who listens looks grounded because they aren't threatened by other voices. And yes, listening takes time. It takes patience. It takes the humility to slow down when your instinct is to move fast. But every minute you spend listening today saves you hours of damage control tomorrow. The leaders who leave the deepest impact aren't remembered for their speeches. They're remembered for the conversations that changed people's lives because they finally felt understood. And once people feel truly heard, they don't just follow directions, they follow with their hearts. In that moment, you feel exposed, embarrassed, defensive. Your mind races for excuses, explanations, anything that softens the impact. And yet, this is where leadership either grows or hardens. Because the truth is simple. Everyone makes mistakes. What separates strong leaders from fragile ones is whether they can say the words, I was wrong, and here's what I'm doing to fix it. Admitting you're wrong doesn't shrink your authority, it deepens your credibility. People already see the mistake. What they're waiting to see is whether you'll protect your pride or protect the team. When you double down on a bad decision just to save face, you train people to stop trusting your judgment. They'll nod politely, but they'll start making quiet backup plans because they know you'll never course correct, even when reality is screaming at you. But when you acknowledge the truth openly, something shifts. Instead of feeling like they're carrying the consequences alone, people feel like you're standing in it with them. And that shared responsibility builds respect. There is a strength in saying,
I rushed this.
I misread the situation.
I should have listened more.
Those sentences don't make you look weak, they make you human. They tell people you care more about getting it right than being right. And here's the surprising part. The moment you own your mistake, others feel safer owning theirs. Suddenly the culture changes. Instead of hiding problems until they explode, people speak up early. Instead of covering tracks, they collaborate to find solutions. Instead of competing to look flawless, they work to get better together. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about modeling growth. If you show that learning stops once you're in charge, then leadership becomes a ceiling. But if you show that leadership is simply the responsibility to keep improving publicly, it becomes an invitation. Of course, admitting you're wrong doesn't end with an apology. It comes with action, a plan, reflection, conversations that ask, what should we do differently next time? That's where the real progress happens, not in guilt, but in adjustment. And maybe the most important lesson here is this. People don't expect their leaders to never fail. They expect their leaders to never hide. When you choose transparency over ego, you build more than trust. You build a culture where truth is valued more than image. And teams built on truth can survive pressure, setbacks, and uncertainty in ways that ego-driven environments simply can't. Owning your mistakes won't always feel comfortable, but it will always move you and everyone around you closer to the kind of leadership that actually lasts. Every leader reaches a point where things feel unfamiliar, uncertain, slightly out of control, and instinctively the mind wants to pull back. It wants safety, predictability, a rhythm where nothing surprises you. But here's the quiet truth most people don't want to hear. You can't grow into the leader you're meant to be while staying in the version of yourself that feels comfortable. Comfort is nice, but it's also sneaky. It convinces you you're stable, when in reality, you're stuck. Leadership constantly puts you in situations where there's no guaranteed outcome. You'll have hard conversations that make your stomach tighten, decisions that affect real people, risks that may not pay off, feedback that stings because it exposes something you need to change. And in those moments, your instinct might say, avoid this, delay it, sugarcoat it, move around it instead of through it. But growth only lives on the other side of those uncomfortable moments. Think about anyone you respect who leads well. They didn't get there by choosing the easy path. They had seasons where they felt unqualified, moments where their voice shook, nights where they replayed conversations, wondering if they handled them right. They didn't become stronger by escaping discomfort. They became stronger by learning to stand in it without losing themselves. Discomfort has a purpose. What's Saipart Tagederson's attacking in a pitch?
It shows you where your next lesson is.
Habits are no longer true. It stretches your patience, your empathy, your perspective. When you stay with it, instead of running from it, you discover something powerful. You're more capable than you thought. Avoiding discomfort might protect your ego in the short term, but it limits your leadership in the long term. Teams feel it when leaders avoid tough topics. They feel it when issues are quietly ignored instead of honestly addressed. Silence becomes normal. Resentment grows. Initiative fades. But when a leader leans into the uncomfortable moments, invites real conversation, asks honest questions, faces tension directly, things start to heal. Not overnight, but steadily. Discomfort isn't chaos. It's a signal. This matters. Pay attention. And yes, it requires courage. It requires vulnerability. It requires staying open when your instinct is to close up. But that's where influence deepens. Because people don't trust leaders who only show up when things are easy. They trust leaders who stay grounded when things get complicated. The truth is, leadership will never stop stretching you. Every new level asks something new of you. More patience, more wisdom, more emotional strength, more willingness to evolve. That's not something to fear. It's something to embrace. Because the discomfort you feel today is shaping the resilience, clarity, and compassion you'll need tomorrow. When you stop running from uncomfortable growth, you stop merely managing, and you start truly leading. If there's one message I wish every new leader could carry from the very beginning, it's this. Leadership isn't about proving yourself. It's about building something meaningful with others. So many people step into leadership thinking it's a test they have to pass. They feel like they're constantly being evaluated, constantly needing to show strength, certainty, composure. And in chasing that image, they forget the deeper purpose of why leadership exists at all. Leadership is meant to lift people, not impress them. When you stop trying to look important and start focusing on helping others feel important, everything shifts. The conversations change. The energy in the room changes. The way people show up changes. You realize leadership is less about spotlight moments and more about what happens in the quiet ones. The one-on-one check-ins, the listening sessions, the honest reflections after mistakes, the encouragement when someone doubts themselves. Those are the moments that shape trust. And trust is the real currency of leadership. Without trust, every instruction feels like pressure. With trust, every challenge feels like a chance to grow together. If I could rewind time for most leaders, I would whisper this in their ear on day one. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. Present enough to notice when someone is struggling. Present enough to hear concerns without immediately defending yourself. The spirit. Present enough to guide, not control. Because people don't remember titles. They remember how leaders made them feel. They remember whether they were respected. They remember whether they felt safe being honest. They remember whether their contributions mattered. And eventually, they either stay and give their best or they leave, quietly carrying the weight of what it could have been. Leadership has a ripple effect that's bigger than any single project or decision. It shapes culture. It shapes how people view themselves. It shapes whether they believe they have a voice worth using. That's why the lesson matters so much. Real leadership stands beside people. It listens. It learns. It adjusts. It owns mistakes. It steps into discomfort not to dominate, but to grow. And when you practice that kind of leadership consistently, something powerful happens. People don't just follow you. They become stronger because of you. They start leading others with the same empathy, courage, and integrity they experienced from you. That's the legacy. Not applause, not recognition, not a list of accomplishments that fade with time. The legacy is people who walk away more confident, more capable, more human, simply because they crossed paths with you. If there's any truth I wish more leaders embraced sooner, it's this. Leadership isn't a position you stand on. It's a relationship you nurture. And when you honor that, leadership stops being a burden and becomes a responsibility you're grateful to carry.